Hello and welcome to PsychEd, and you're watching part 3 of the video Introduction to Psychology. So, before actually beginning, I would like to say that I got a really good response in the last two videos, and I've also been given the feedback that I should use both Hindi and English in my videos to connect better with the audience and to make understanding of all these concepts easier. So, I'll take that feedback and now I'll be bilingual in my videos. So, in the last two videos, we covered structuralism, functionalism, behaviorism. In the next one, we covered psychoanalytic. And in this video, we are covering Gestalt psychology. I've also decided that for history of psychology, we'll do humanistic and cognitive perspective in the next video, but very briefly, because these two parts will be covered in detail when we do the therapies and personality section. So for now, let's get into Gestalt psychology and let's get started. So Gestalt psychology actually began in Germany in the early 1900s. And some of the famous psychologists are Kurt Kofka, Max Wertheimer, Wolfgang Kohler, and Kurt Lewin. These are all German psychologists, and their names are very important. मैं हर बार कहती हूँ और हर बार एम्फसाइज करती हूँ कि जितने भी साइकोलॉजिस्ट का नाम मैं यहाँ पे बता रही हूँ वो सब बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट है क्योंकि जो भी मैंने सीयूईटी के पेपर्स देखे और जितने भी एंट्रेंस एग्जाम्स या पेपर्स होते हैं उसमें साइकोलॉजिस्ट के नाम और उनके दिए हुए कॉन्सेप्ट्स के क्वेश्चंस बहुत ज्यादा आते हैं स्पेशली मैच द फॉलोइंग में तो ये नाम बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट है किसने कौन सा कॉन्सेप्ट दिया है ये याद करना बहुत जरूरी है तो ये सब हमारे फेमस गेस्टॉल साइकोलॉजिस्ट हैं जिन्होंने ये फाउंडेशन गेस्टॉल्ट साइकोलॉजी खड़ी की गेस्टॉल्ट भी एक जर्मन टर्म है जिसका मतलब हम आगे समझते हैं तो Gestalt psychologists actually said that behavior should be studied as a whole and not as a sum of its parts. अभी तक जितने भी हमने स्कूल्स ऑफ साइकोलॉजी की है स्पेशली स्ट्रक्चरलिज्म और फंक्शनलिज्म इन सब का कहना यही था कि हम लोग फंक्शंस ऑफ माइंड और उसके फंक्शंस ऑफ द पार्ट्स ऑफ ब्रेन हम ये सब पढ़े साइकोलॉजी में बट गेस्टॉल साइकोलॉजी के हिसाब से behavior, mental processes, experiences should be studied as a whole and not as a sum of its parts. Therefore, this school of psychology emphasizes the study of experiences, behavior as a whole, rather than independently functioning differing parts. This means that mental processes are wholes instead of a chain of sensations. चलिए इसे आगे समझते हैं so, Gestalt theory suggests that human brain will make an effort to simplify and organize complex images or designs that contain a number of elements. तो हमारे आसपास हमारे एनवायरनमेंट में काफी सारी सेंसेशंस मौजूद होती हैं और हर वक्त ये हमारे सेंसरी इनपुट्स पे यानी सेंस ऑर्गन्स पे बॉम्बार्ड करती रहती हैं इतनी सारी इंफॉर्मेशन इसको इंटरप्रेट करना हमारे ब्रेन के लिए बहुत डिफिकल्ट हो जाएगा इसीलिए ये स्टॉल साइकोलॉजी कहती है कि हम चीजों को सिंप्लीफाइड ढंग से ऑर्गेनाइज्ड और स्ट्रक्चर्ड तरीके से देखते हैं और यही हमें साइकोलॉजी में पढ़ना चाहिए तो ये प्रोसेस अनकॉन्शियसली होता है by unconsciously arranging the parts into a structured system a whole rather than just a collection of unrelated parts is produced. In order for us to comprehend the environment we live in, our brains are designed to see structure and pattern. जैसे इस फिगर को देखते हैं यहाँ पे हम इसको एज लाइंस नहीं देखते या एज जस्ट एज शेडेड फिगर्स नहीं देखते हम इसको एज अ रेक्टेंगल हेक्सागन ट्रायंगल एक शेडेड हेक्सागन रेक्टेंगल और ओवल या एक फ्लावर एक व्हील इस तरह से हम इसे देखते हैं ना कि ये एक स्टैंडिंग लाइन एक स्लीपिंग लाइन हम ऐसे नहीं देखते हम बहुत ही सिंप्लीफाइड और स्ट्रक्चर्ड वे में सारे स्टिमुलाई यानी कि इन ऑब्जेक्ट्स को या अपने इवेंट्स को इंटरप्रेट करते हैं। तो यही गेस्टॉल साइकोलॉजी का कहना है। तो हमने बहुत सारे टर्म्स यूज किए हैं यहाँ पे, स्टिमुलाई, सेंसरी प्रोसेसेस, सेंसेशन, परसेप्शन, इन सबको समझना बहुत जरूरी है। So sensation, all our sensory inputs, that is seeing, listening, taste, touch and smell, are called sensation. जितने भी हमारे सेंस ऑर्गन्स हैं, यानी कि आईज, नोज, ईयर्स, टंग एंड स्किन, ये सब स्टिमुलस एनवायरनमेंट से लेते हैं। स्टिमुलस मतलब कोई भी इनपुट जो एनवायरनमेंट से हमें मिल रहा है इन सेंस ऑर्गन्स पर, इनके प्रोसेसेस को कहते हैं सेंसेशन। But these sensations are of no use until and unless we interpret them. So, our interpretation of our sensory inputs is called perception. जितने भी inputs हमारे सेंस ऑर्गन्स को रिसीव हो रहे हैं, उसका कोई मतलब ही नहीं रह जाता जब तक हम उसे इंटरप्रेट ना करें, उसे समझे ना। और उसको समझने के प्रोसेस को हम परसेप्शन कहते हैं। और ये पूरा प्रोसेस कहाँ होता है? ब्रेन में। तो ये है हमारा प्रोसेस। स्टिमुलस आता है, हम हमारे सेंसरी रिसेप्टर्स इसे रिसीव करते हैं, बट हम सारे सेंसरी सेंसेशंस को अपने ब्रेन में इंटरप्रेट नहीं कर सकते। जिसकी हमें जरूरत है, हम केवल उन्हीं को इंटरप्रेट करेंगे। इसलिए हमें कुछ सिलेक्टिव प्रोसेस सेंसेशंस को ही परसीव करना होता है। तो हम उस पे अटेंशन देते हैं, जो हम आगे समझेंगे। और फिर हमारे जितने भी साइकोलॉजिकल प्रोसेसेस हैं, लर्निंग, मेमोरी, थिंकिंग, इंटेलिजेंस, पर्सनालिटी, they interpreted, and then we have the thing called perception, and that is when we react accordingly. तो तो ये हमने परसेप्शन वर्ड यूज किया। परसेप्शन को हम आगे समझते हैं, ये काफी इम्पोर्टेंट पार्ट बन जाता है। तो कुछ टाइम पहले मैंने ये नोट्स बनाए थे परसेप्शन एंड सेंसेशन पे। तो इसी नोट्स को मैं रेफर करूंगी अब, so that we can understand some of the important concepts related to perception. So नेचर ऑफ परसेप्शन की जब बात करते हैं कि परसेप्शन एक्चुअली है क्या, तो परसेप्शन इज एक्चुअली अ प्रोसेस। ये कोई प्रोडक्ट नहीं है, ये कोई आउटकम नहीं है, ये एक फुल फ्लेजेड प्रोसेस है जिससे हम सेंसरी इनपुट लेते हैं और आउटपुट आता है थ्रू द इंटरप्रिटेशन एंड ऑर्गेनाइजेशन ऑफ दोज सेंसरी इनपुट्स। तो perception is essentially a process rather than being a product or outcome of some psychological phenomena. If we talk in terms of systems approach, then sensory impressions gathered through a sense organ may be termed as input. The way in which we finally behave or react to this gathered information will be the output. तो ये इनपुट आउटपुट लेने का प्रोसेस, इंटरप्रिटेशन का प्रोसेस, ये सब परसेप्शन है। Then we say that perception is the information extractor. Our sensory receptors are bombarded continuously by various stimuli present in the environment, and therefore it becomes difficult for us to react to each one of those stimulations. So, the selection process actually helps in choosing the relevant information out of all these uh, sensory inputs and converting them into meaningful pattern in a structured, organized way. So it actually selects the relevant matter that we need from the environment. So it is the information extractor. Perception is preparation to response. So, like we said, इनपुट आता है, हम उसको इंटरप्रेट करते हैं और एक आउटपुट आता है। तो एक अप्रोप्रिएट रिस्पॉन्स के लिए हम परसीव करते हैं चीजें। इसीलिए परसेप्शन रिस्पॉन्ड करने के लिए, रिएक्ट करने के लिए एक प्रोसेस है। देन वी हैव परसेप्शन इन्वॉल्व्स सेंसेशन। The relationship between sensation and perception is always direct. That is what we do to have in sensation is always a part of perception. तो सेंसेशन परसेप्शन का ही एक बहुत ही इम्पोर्टेंट हिस्सा है. Perception provides organization. In addition to the help of provided in deriving the meaning to sensory impressions, perception also helps in proper arrangement and organization. तो हम ना केवल उस सेंसरी इनपुट को इंटरप्रेट करते हैं, but we also make proper arrangement and organize the data that we receive from the environment. And that is the work of perception only. And last, in nature of perception is that perception is highly individualized. That means perception is subjective. Different individuals do not perceive same object or events or relationships in much the same way. फॉर एग्जाम्पल यहाँ जैसे बहुत ही अच्छा एग्जाम्पल दिया है कि एक फार्मर के लिए रेन एक पॉजिटिव चीज है, वो रेन्स को पॉजिटिव वे में परसीव करेगा. बट एक हॉकर जो कि अपने सामान सेल कर रहा है रोड पे, उसके लिए रेन अच्छी चीज नहीं है, तो वो एक नेगेटिव परसेप्शन होगा रेन के लिए उसका. तो हर इंसान एक पर्टिकुलर इवेंट को अलग तरीके से देखता है. तो यही perception है कि perception is highly individualized. Then we talk about perceptual processes. So these perceptual processes, the three things that we talk about is schemas, assimilation, and accommodation. And these three things we'll study in our lifespan. And this process is given by Jon Piaget. लिखते तो हम बोलते तो हम यौन है पर लिखते हम जीन है एक्चुअली. जीन पियाजे. So this concept was given by Jean Piaget, and the first thing is schemas, framework of basic ideas and preconceptions about people, objects, events based on past experience and long-term memory. इसका मतलब ये कि whatever mental representations we have of the events of people around us and our experiences are all a part of the schema. All right. And whenever we gather new information, we incorporate it into our existing schema. And this is called assimilation. So, whatever new information that we receive, we incorporate it, and this process is assimilation. But sometimes it happens that we may need to modify our existing schema to fit in the new information. This process is called accommodation. Let's not get confused between the terms assimilation and accommodation. Assimilation is the incorporation of new information, and accommodation is the modification of existing schema to fit in that new information. For example, for a child, if he sees a horse, he may call it a dog because maybe for him all four-legged animals are dogs. He assimilates the information that this animal is a dog. And through accommodation, the child will modify this information and adapt the existing schema to incorporate the knowledge that some four-legged animals are horses or cats, right? Then we come on to the types of perceptual processes. There are two kinds of perceptual processes, right? So bottom-up processing and top-down processing. So what is bottom-up processing? That the information that we receive through our sense organs is travels to the brain and we interpret it step by step, gathering the new information one by one. So we build up through this stimuli and we move further to react in a certain way. For example, if you see an image of an individual letter on your screen, your eyes transmit the information to your brain, and your brain puts all of this information together to interpret it, right? Then comes top-down processing. So it is the brain's use of pre-existing knowledge and beliefs and expectations to interpret the sensory information. So in this top-down processing, the information that we interpret is done through the use of our past knowledge and past experiences. So, for example, like over here we see, we don't know what this letter is. It can be a B, it can be a 13. So, we check this in context of other things, a pre-existing knowledge that we have. So, if we see it from top to bottom, we see that it's a B. But if we see it from left to right, we see that it's 12, 13, and 14. So we derive the meaning of the word through the surrounding words or the knowledge that we already have. That's what top-down processing is. We can look at this particular diagram here to remember to not get confused between bottom-up processing and top-down processing. We can see that like from bottom-up processing, we start from scratch. We start from the very bottom, and then we move upward, build, taking down all the information from the environment and then interpreting it. But in top-down processing, we already have some kind of knowledge and we interpret that stimuli according to our existing knowledge. That is top-down processing. So that is it for perception. And so now we are doing the laws of perceptual organization. Much early Gestalt research was concentrated in the area of perception, and these laws altogether were called the law of pregnance. Pregnance is a German term only. And what does this mean? Let's see. Perceptual organization will always be as regular, simple, and symmetric as possible. This means we tend to interpret our sensory stimulation so as to perceive the simplest possible pattern. So, whenever we are perceiving an object in our environment, we tend to see the simplest possible pattern we can. So, it would be a structured object, it would be symmetric, or it would be very organized so that we, our brain does not have to do so much of work. So we tend to look at it in a very simple, patterned way. All right. Let us see what these laws are. First, we have the law of proximity. Elements close to one another are perceived as a unit. So, जैसे कि हम इस डायग्राम में देख सकते हैं जो भी सर्कल्स हम इस फिगर को एक लाइन सर्कल्स की ये देखते हैं और दो लाइंस ये साथ में देखते हैं एंड वी परसीव दिस पार्ट एज अ ग्रुप because these two lines are in close proximity with one another. So हम इस फिगर को ऐसे नहीं देखते कि these are three lines of circles, but we see that there are two groups with one line and two lines close and close together, close proximity. So we want to see the simplest possible pattern of any object, right? Like in this figure. So this is the law of proximity. Elements close to one another are perceived as a unit, जैसे कि ये दो lines. Next is law of similarity. Objects similar to each other tend to be grouped together. ये हमारा stimuli है. हम इसको कैसे perceive करेंगे? जो ऑब्जेक्ट्स सिमिलर हैं हम उसको एक ग्रुप की तरह ट्रीट करेंगे और जो अलग है हम उसे अलग ट्रीट करेंगे ये हमारा ब्रेन का स्टिमुलाई इंटरप्रेट करने का एक तरीका है ये हमारा परसेप्शन है And this is the law of similarity. Similar objects tend to be grouped together. Law of continuity. Elements that appear to follow one another tend to be grouped together. Look at this figure here. In this, the blue dots tend to follow a single line, a single pattern, and the orange ones tend to be in this single continuity. We do not see this figure as something like this or like this, but we see them in one pattern. These blue ones follow one continuum, this one follows one continuum, and this is the law of continuity, right? Elements appear to follow one another, right? Then we have law of closure. Don't you see here that this is a rectangle and this is a circle? But this is not the truth, right? This is not the reality. This is what our brain perceives it as. These are just single dashes or lines drawn anywhere. But we perceive it as a closed circle, as a closed rectangle. So figures that are incomplete tend to be complete than they really are. This is the law of closure. Law of simplicity. We tend to interpret our sensory stimulation so that we perceive the simplest possible pattern. If we see this figure, we would perceive this as a rectangle, circle, and triangle. Whether it is the truth or not, we tend to see it that way because that's how our brain interprets it. We want simplicity, we want symmetry, we want a kind of a pattern that is already known to us. And this is the law of simplicity. But sometimes what happens is that these differences or this pattern is not actually formed in our brains because of some kind of distortions. So, what that means is, we study here the figure ground relationship. According to this principle of figure ground relationship, a figure is perceived in relation to its background. For example, the words are figures that appear on the background of a page. जैसे ये एक सिंगल वर्ड है जो कि हमें ये फिगर है हमारा और ये पूरा हमारा बैकग्राउंड है इस पे हमें अपना ऑब्जेक्ट दिख रहा है we perceive a figure against a background or background against a figure depending on the characteristics of the perceiver as well as the relative strength of the figure or ground तो और ये हर सेंसरी एक्सपीरियंस के साथ होता है केवल आईज के साथ नहीं ये केवल विजुअल एक्सपीरियंस नहीं है ये टेस्ट के साथ टच के साथ सबके साथ हो सकता है जैसे एक और एग्जांपल लेते हैं पर्सन हु इज ईटिंग अ मील दैट टेस्ट टू सॉल्टी we will perceive salt as figure on the ground of chapatis and vegetables so ये हर सेंस के साथ होता है कि हम एक चीज को उभरता हुआ मानते हैं एक चीज को हम एज फिगर लेते हैं और बाकी चीजों को हम बैकग्राउंड में देखते हैं but sometimes no proper figure ground relationship exists and there is ambiguity in terms of perception हमें नहीं समझ आता कि वो चीज एक्चुअली है क्या और इसी की मैं बात कर रही थी इसका सबसे बड़ा एग्जांपल है रूबन्स वास अब यहाँ पे ये तो हमें वास दिख रहा है पर उसके साथ साथ हमें दो फेसेस भी दिख रहे हैं एक ये वाला और एक ये वाला और यही डिस्टॉर्शन जब क्रिएट होता है तो ये एक्चुअली एक तरह से क्लियर परसेप्शन नहीं है राइट दिस इज एन इल्यूजन कि हमें इसमें दो फेसेस भी दिख रहे हैं और इसमें हमें एक वास भी दिख रहा है तो ये प्रॉपर फिगर ग्राउंड रिलेशन इसमें एग्जिस्ट नहीं करता so these were all our laws of perceptual organization and now so the only thing left in this portion of Gestalt psychology is the monocular and binocular depth cues. But since this video has already become really long, I don't want to make it boring for everyone. So that part I'll take up in another short video. And in that video only, I will cover the sensation, that is the eyes and the ears, taste and uh, touch. So we'll study all those things later on. For now, I think this is enough for us to actually understand what Gestalt psychology is. So I'll end the video here. Thank you so much for watching and stay tuned for the next video. Thank you.